time for the Michael Huddleston Show on HUDRadio.com.
I appreciate your input.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. 832-699-0110 is the number that you need to call. Leave us your thoughts, your concerns, or your remarks about what you hear on the show today. You can also go to our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/mhudradio. Today on the show, we're going to talk a little bit about voting. That is the big thing here in Texas right now, as early voting is underway. And the Texas primary is a couple days away from us. That would be Tuesday, May 29th. Finally, after all the redistricting battles and the lawsuits and everything that seems to happen every time we have some kind of vote in Texas, we always get in some kind of arguments about redistricting and everything else. But anyways, all that is past for this time. And now it is time to get to the voting. And something very interesting that has got me all boiled and going is the fact that Ted Cruz is not the leading candidate for Kay Bailey Hutchison's seat in the Texas Senate. And this is just totally outrageous, to be totally honest. This is something that doesn't surprise me to a degree, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But it is surprising that David Dewhurst leads this race, and not just leads it, he leads it by miles. In a recent poll that surveyed Texans all over the state, he leads 41% to 12. Dewhurst has 41% of the votes. Cruz only has 12%, while there are 34% of the people polled that were undecided or were voting for somebody else with a margin of error around 5%. So there is some big numbers there for Cruz to get a hold of. And for some reason, David Dewhurst is still in this race. And here's why it surprises me so much. And David Dewhurst has always been an insider. He is what we call establishment Republican. He's been part of the Rick Perry campaign for all these years as he's been the governor of Texas. He continues to be a mudslinger in this campaign, at least, accusing Ted Cruz of all sorts of different things. And a couple of those things that we'll look at right now is Ted Cruz has been accused of leading the push to give amnesty to illegals. Well, as the Houston Chronicle reported, that Ted is a hardliner on border security and illegal immigration. He opposes amnesty. The DREAM Act and the Texas laws that allow in-state college tuition to children of illegal immigrants. He voted against that. He's rallied against that. Ted Cruz fought the UN and the World Court before the U.S. Supreme Court, defending Texas's jury rights to execute an illegal alien for brutally raping and murdering 2 teenage girls in Houston. And if that's not enough, David Dewhurst is making false and desperate attacks because his own record is so weak on illegal immigration. And this is what I find interesting, that under Dewhurst, Texas has become a sanctuary state where illegal immigrants can come here because they know they can find work here. There has never been a push by the Perry campaign or the Dewhurst campaign to lock down on border security. You've never heard him say that, and when he has said that, it's been very vague and very unspecific. In the last session, the last legislative session, David Dewhurst killed the bill that would have banned sanctuary cities. Think about that. In the last session, Dewhurst killed a bill that would have ended the in-state tuition for illegal aliens. And Dewhurst has repeatedly waffled on building a wall to secure our borders. So the fact that he's sitting here slinging mud about Ted Cruz pushing to give amnesty to illegals is kind of ridiculous. And one more thing to bolster that on Ted Cruz's side of things, his position on legal amnesty has been very clear. He said it very times. He said he quote, unequivocally opposes amnesty. And he says he has, and he always will. Of course, campaign promises and stuff that is said in campaigns you have to take with a grain of salt. But if you look at his record, Ted Cruz's that is, you'll see that he has a proven record of that. The other thing that Dewhurst has been slinging mud is that he is a trial lawyer. Well, number one, Ted Cruz has never been a trial lawyer. He's an appellate lawyer, and typically when you say somebody is a trial lawyer, you're meaning that they're a plaintiff's lawyer and they represent people. In fact, that's not the case. Ted Cruz has argued to courts to appeal. Ted Cruz argues to courts of appeals and helps to ensure that U.S. law is properly applied. There's so much going on with that. I'm not going to tell you have to vote for Ted Cruz or you should vote for Ted Cruz, because you need to vote for whoever you're going to vote for. But this is a guy who has been backed by the Tea Party, backed by Rick Santorum, backed by Sarah Palin, and backed by all the Tea Party Republicans that are out there. A vote for Ted Cruz is the way that Texas needs to go, because a vote for David Dewhurst is voting for the establishment. And that brings me to my second point that we're going to talk about in this little clip here, is that Texans need to realize how to vote. Do not just vote for the guy because you've heard of him and he has an R behind his name. That is the reason we've gotten to where we've gotten now. This stretches back about 10 years or so, maybe even a little bit longer, in the fact that Republicans got this thing in their mind that they said, I don't like either guy on the ballot, so I'm just not going to vote. Well, not voting does not help our cause. The only reason Barack Obama is in Washington right now is because there were plenty of Republicans in 2008 who didn't like the choice of John McCain and definitely didn't like Obama, so what'd they do? They stayed home. Let's not do that. And let's not just vote for the guy that we've heard of the most, a.k.a. David Dewhurst. I guarantee you, if you went around Texas and you went door to door and asked people, why are you voting for David Dewhurst, the reason would be because they've never heard of the other guys on the ballot. They've never heard of Tom Leppert unless you live in Dallas. He was a Dallas Bear. You've never heard of Craig James unless you were in the Lubbock area or you watched ESPN. And you've never heard of Ted Cruz. I never heard of Ted Cruz until he started running for office and started digging into his files and digging into the way he voted. And he's a great candidate. He's the best candidate for the Texas Senate. He's the best candidate for Texas. And there's a lot of good things he will do for this country. And David Dewhurst, I just don't have the willpower to vote for him or the willpower to even deal with it being an establishment Republican. It's time to get rid of these establishment Republicans. Everybody talks about we got to unseat Obama, we got to unseat Pelosi, we got to unseat Harry Reid, we got to get rid of these liberals, and we got to get rid of our establishment Republicans first, because those guys are doing nothing except occupying seats in the Texas Senate and occupying seats in the legislature. You got to take baby steps. We got to get ourselves right as Republicans and conservatives before we can get right the country. That's just how you build leadership. It always fascinates me. I've always wondered what the founding fathers would think of this country if they were somehow to be able to come back in time. Do you ever think about that? Because our country was founded on building your own life, on your own work. And in this country, we've just gotten away from that. And we have a House full of Republicans and a Senate full of Republicans that in some ways don't care. They're just going to do what they can to get reelected. And this is why I feel so strongly about this. My producer, Jay Ryan, and I had this conversation this week about talking about this topic, and it was something that I thought about, and at one point decided I wasn't going to talk about it at all, because he made some good points about not supporting a candidate vocally at this point. But the more I dig into it, the more I have to say it fires me up that Ted Cruz is not leading this race, because it shows me that sometimes either we want the current establishment or we're just not paying attention. And both options scare me, because both options is what has led us to where we are now. So just think about those things. Again, 832-699-0110 is the number. Call us, give us your opinions, tell us what you think, argue with me, convince me I'm wrong. Somebody do that. Somebody convince me I'm wrong. I would love for somebody to convince me that I'm wrong. I would love for somebody to challenge me, because that's one of the greatest things about living in this country and living in this state is the fact that we have freedom of speech and freedom of opinion, and nobody can take that away from us. And that's all the time we have for this segment. If you stay tuned and navigate your way through our page and click on down to the next episode on our list, we will talk about wasteful spending in Texas and a little bit about where's all that toll money going that you pay for. Now, I know living in Houston, we have the Sam Houston Tollway, the Hardy Tollway, the Katy Tollway, all these other tollways. But did you know that most of those tollways are already paid off and we're still paying the tolls for them? We'll talk a little bit about that and other government wasteful spending, such as renovating an Astrodome that doesn't need to be renovated. So join us next time. Thanks for joining in.
Join us next time for more of the Michael Huddleston Show. Be sure and check out the Facebook page at www.facebook.com/inhudradio.